The sky above was not blue, not even gray, it was a deep, rusty orange, filled with floating dust and pieces of broken metal. This place was not a city, not a battlefield, but a forgotten scrapyard on the edge of a dying alien world. Mountains of wreckage, old machines, warships, and broken droids stood like ghosts of a long-lost war. And beneath one of those twisted piles of rusted metal, two alien women were trapped. One was older, with sharp cheekbones and skin like silver stone. The other was younger, her hair a pale violet and her eyes almost glowing. Their names no one knew anymore, not even the stars, but they knew each other, and they knew pain. The trap had snapped shut around their legs hours ago, or maybe days. It was hard to tell time when you were bleeding, shaking, and praying to be saved. The trap was not meant for them. It was old, probably set long ago for wild beasts that roamed the scrapyard at night. Now it held their limbs like iron teeth, refusing to let go. The older woman gritted her teeth, trying to pull the metal apart. She failed again. Beside her, the younger one whimpered, tears mixing with the dust on her face. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Sister, I think I can't feel my foot anymore." The older one looked at her, and for a moment, her strong face softened. She reached over with her one free arm and brushed the girl's face gently. "I know," she said, her voice dry like sand, "but don't sleep, okay? Not yet. Not until someone finds us." "Who would find us?" the girl whispered. "No one comes here anymore. We're just scrap now." Silence followed, only the sound of shifting metal and a far-off wind. The older woman looked at the dark sky. Blinking slowly, maybe the girl was right. Maybe no one would come. Her vision blurred, and for the first time, she thought of closing her eyes for good. Then, crunch, a soft sound. Crunch, crunch. Crunch, like someone walking slowly on gravel and broken glass. The younger alien's ears twitched. She blinked and turned her head, panic rising. "Did you hear that?" The older one stayed still, holding her breath. Another step closer, heavier. "Someone's here," the girl whispered, trembling now. "Someone's here. Quiet." The older one warned, unsure if it was hope or danger approaching from the shadows beyond the rusted hill. A figure appeared. It wasn't a drone, not a beast, not an alien. It was a man, a human. His boots were old and dusty, his jacket torn at the sleeves. A scar ran down his cheek and his eyes looked tired, but he walked with purpose, scanning the wreckage like he knew this place. He paused, looked around, then saw them too. Broken alien women caught in a trap. The younger girl screamed, thinking it was over. They had heard stories of humans before. Warriors, conquerors, cold and cruel. "Please," she shouted, "don't hurt us. We're nothing. Leave us alone." The man stopped, looked at her, then stepped closer. Slowly, he said nothing, no weapon in hand, just quiet eyes filled with something strange. Pity, curiosity. The older woman pushed herself up with one elbow, blocking the girl. "If you're going to kill us," she said, her voice like steel, "do it fast." But the man didn't kill them. He knelt beside the trap, touched the rusted metal, then looked at their faces. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small, toolsome kind of cutter, and he started working. "What is he doing?" the younger one asked, heart pounding. "Why is he helping?" The older woman didn't answer. She just watched, confused, breathing harder now. Sparks flew as the tool hissed and screamed against the metal. It hurt. The trap shifted and dug deeper before loosening, but it was working. The man removed one side of the trap, then the other, with careful hands. He lifted the younger girl's leg and pulled the last piece off. She cried out, but the pain was mixed with relief. Then he turned to the older woman, repeating the same steps. More sparks, more cutting, more blood. And then, Freedom. The two women lay there, too weak to move, too stunned to speak. The man looked at them both, then stood up. He pulled off his jacket and placed it gently over the younger girl's shaking body. Then, finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You're safe now," and just like that. He turned his head to the rising wind, scanning the horizon. But they knew this human didn't just find them. He chose them, and for the first time in forever. They weren't alone beneath the rusted sky. The jacket covering the younger alien girl smelled strange, like smoke, metal, and something warm, human sweat. She clutched it close to her chest, shivering even though the sun had returned. Her leg was still bleeding, but the pain felt distant now. Her eyes never left the man who had freed them. He stood just a few feet away. Checking the rusted sky with narrowed eyes, his body was tense, like he was expecting something or someone. But why? Why would a human be out here, alone, on a dead planet? And why would he help to strangers? The older alien woman slowly sat, up her leg trembling beneath her. "You," she said, her voice raspy. "Who are you?" The man looked back. Finally meeting her gaze, he didn't answer. But he took a step forward and dropped a small pouch beside them. Inside it were water capsules, dried food, and bandages, worn but clean. The younger girl gasped. He brought supplies. The older woman picked up the bandages, her hands shaking. She narrowed her eyes at him. "You knew someone was here." Still, the man said nothing. Instead, he pointed to the trap, then to himself, then to the sky. The girls looked at each other, confused. He wasn't speaking their language, but his gestures were clear. He wasn't supposed to be here. He didn't plan to find them. But now that he had, he wasn't leaving. Suddenly, the younger girl cried out in pain, clutching her leg. The wound had started bleeding again. The man rushed forward. Dropping to his knees and opening the bandage roll, she flinched as he touched her. But he moved with care, not like a soldier, but like someone who had done this before. He cleaned the cut with a soft cloth soaked in something cool, then wrapped the bandage tight. Tying it with steady fingers, the girl stared at him the whole time, her voice barely a whisper. "You're not like the others, are you?" Of course, he couldn't understand her words, but somehow she felt he understood her fear once both women were bandaged. The man stood and scanned the scrapyard again. His hand reached for something behind his back, a weapon. No, a device, a small round scanner blinking red, the older woman recognized. It military tech, human-made. The blinking light meant something was near. And it wasn't friendly. "Hide," she said quickly, pulling the younger girl close and dragging her behind a pile of wrecked machines. The humans saw them move, then followed without hesitation. Crouching low, a moment later, the air buzzed with energy. A drone, black and sleek-covered, passed the broken hill, scanning with blue light, its camera eye glowed. Sweeping slowly back and forth, looking for heat. Movement? Survivors. The younger girl held her breath, her hand over her mouth. Her heart thumped so loud she thought the drone would hear it. The human moved closer, barely breathing. His hand hovered above a small metal ball on his belt. A pulse jammer, the older woman guessed. If the drone got too close, he might have to use it, but that would give away their location. The drone paused, as if sensing something. Then, it turned and floated away, vanishing into the dusty sky. The three of them didn't move for a long moment. Then finally, the human relaxed and stood again. Wiping his brow, the younger girl whispered, "That was." Close, the older one watched him carefully. "You're a soldier." Or were one. The man met her eyes, his expression unreadable. Then he tapped his chest right over a faded symbol. Hidden by dust, the symbol of a human expedition unit. But that unit had been lost years ago. Everyone presumed dead, the girl gasped. "You're A ghost. He smiled, just a little, and sat down beside them. He pulled out a small silver cube, twisted its side, and a soft blue map appeared in the air. A layout of the underground tunnels beneath the scrapyard. He pointed to a blinking dot there. Location then pointed far beyond the rusted hills to a spot marked SAFE. The older woman nodded slowly. "You want to take us there?" The man gave a single nod, then stood, offering his hand. But neither girl could stand, not with their injuries, not yet. So he bent down again. Wrapped his arms around the younger one first. She gasped as he lifted her, but didn't resist. Then he motioned for the older one to follow. Walking slowly, carefully, she limped behind, leaning on a bent metal rod like a cane. And as they moved together, broken and silent, under the rusted sky, the strange trio began their journey. They didn't know each other's names. They didn't share the same world or language, but somehow, something unspoken passed between them. A bond born not from words, but from the choice to save, to carry, to not abandon. Behind them, the wind blew, lifting the dust, covering the blood. Ahead of them lay more danger, but for now, they had a human who shouldn't be there, and that made all the difference. The tunnel entrance was nothing more than a cracked hatch hidden beneath broken engine parts. Most would have missed it, but the human didn't. He knelt and brushed the dirt away with his bare hand, revealing the faded military markings carved into the hatch. Then he pulled a lever from the side rusted, barely working end. The hatch groaned open like an old beast waking up. Below, the darkness waited. Cold, silent, heavy. The human climbed down first, holding a light that glowed faint blue. Then he reached up, arms out, ready to carry the younger alien woman again. She hesitated, her body still weak, but her mind full of questions. Who was this man? Why was he helping them without asking anything in return? No chains, no commands, no weapons, drawn only kindness. A kind she had never seen before. Not from humans, not even from her own kind. The older woman gave her a slight nod, and the girl let herself be lifted. The human carried her down, step by step, never once letting her slip. The older one followed, wincing as she lowered herself through the narrow hatch, using her elbow and her makeshift cane to steady herself. Inside the tunnel, the air was damp and smelled of iron and old wires. It was an old maintenance route, long forgotten by the world above. The walls were lined with broken lights, cracked screens, and moss that glowed faintly green. As they moved deeper, the girl in his arms looked up at him. You're strong," she whispered, even though she knew he wouldn't understand. But he glanced down and gave her a small, tired smile, as if he had understood anyway. They walked in silence for a long while. Then the tunnel opened into a small chamber, once used for repairs, now abandoned. The human laid her gently on a flat surface, once a machine bed, now covered in dust. Then he turned and pulled open a metal box on the wall. Inside were old supplies, welding tools, scrap wires, even a power pack still holding charge. He brought out more bandages and a bottle of clear liquid. The smell was sharp disinfectant. The older woman watched him closely, standing nearby. Her body was tense, unsure whether to trust him still. Then he motioned for her to help hold the younger girl's leg. She obeyed, holding it steady, though her own hands trembled. The human took a cloth, poured the disinfectant on it, and began cleaning the wound properly this time. The girl screamed not loud, but enough to echo off the metal walls. Her leg jerked, but the older woman held it firmly. Whispering calming words, he didn't stop, didn't flinch. He just kept working, his brow furrowed, his hands steady despite the blood running down his arm. The girl was sweating, her face pale, but she didn't cry anymore. She just watched him, breathing hard. And he never looked away from the wound, not even once until the bandage was done. Then, for the first time, He sat back and let out a long breath. His hands were stained red, his shirt soaked through with sweat. But he didn't ask for thanks, didn't speak. He simply turned and began cleaning his tools. The older woman stepped closer, looking at him carefully. You know? Pain, she said softly. You've done this before. On yourself, haven't you? The man didn't answer, but the scars on his hands told their own story long. Jagged, old and new. This was not his first rescue. This was not his first war. Suddenly, the scanner on his wrist blinked one short pulse. Red. He stared at it, frowning, then turned off the light and raised a finger to his lips. Silence, again. Footsteps echoed from deeper in the tunnel, not metal, but soft ones. Voices too low to understand, but too close to ignore. Someone was down there. The human grabbed a piece of sheet metal and leaned it over the girl like a shield. He motioned for the older woman to lie low beside her. Then he vanished into the shadows. No sound, no words, just gone. The girls held their breath, lying in the dark. The younger one whispered, "He's protecting us." Again, minutes passed, then a scream echoed from the hallway. Not theirs, not the humans. It was sharp, surprised, and ended suddenly. Then, us. Silence. More minutes passed, and then the human returned. His arm was scratched, his knuckles bleeding, but his eyes were calm. He nodded once danger gone, for now. The older woman stood up slowly, walking toward him. She looked him in the eyes, then reached out her hand, not as a patient, not as a burden, but as an equal. Whatever. Your name is, she said. You've saved our lives twice now, and we will not forget it. The human took her hand, held it for a second, and then looked away. Not in shame, but like someone not used to kindness given to him. In that moment, something changed. They were no longer two broken alien women and one lost human. They were a unit wounded, hunted, but united by something stronger than fear. Mercy had built that bridge, and blood had sealed it. Night came fast on this ruined world. It didn't fade slowly like on peaceful planets. Instead, it dropped like a curtain sudden. Dark and cold, above the rusted sky turned black. And the wind howled through twisted metal like a voice in pain. Inside the tunnel chamber, the human sat against the wall. One arm wrapped in torn cloth. The younger alien girl slept lightly, her injured leg elevated on an old pipe. The older woman stayed awake, sitting across from the man. Her sharp eyes didn't miss anything, not the way his breathing slowed, not the way his head nodded from exhaustion, but also not the way he kept one hand near his weapon. Always ready, she whispered. You haven't slept properly in days, have you? The human looked at her, but didn't respond. Still, she saw the answer in his tired eyes. The younger girl stirred and whimpered in her sleep, her face twitching with pain. The man rose quietly and walked over to her. He knelt, pulled a small cloth from his pack, dipped it in the last of their water, and gently touched it to her forehead. The girl calmed down instantly, sighing as if his presence brought peace, even in sleep. The older woman watched this and whispered to herself, "You're not just a soldier. You're something else." Then, suddenly click. The tunnel lights, long dead, flickered once, then died again. But it was enough. The human stood up fast, his eyes sharp. He pulled out a scanner from his belt, its display blinking red again. Movement detected, close by. Not footsteps, this time, but a signal. Mechanical, slow, heavy. The older woman leaned in, whispering drones. The man nodded once, then pointed down the hallway, the path they had come from. It was no longer safe. He grabbed his flashlight and dimmed it to its lowest setting, then gestured for them to pack quickly, whatever little they had. The older woman helped the girl up, who winced but bit her lip to stay quiet. There was no time for rest now. They moved through the tunnel, slow and quiet. every footstep echoing just a little too loud. The girl clung to the man's shoulder as he helped her walk. The older woman kept glancing behind them, her heart beating like a war drum. Then a faint buzzing in the distance, followed by a soft clicking sound, like something crawling across the metal walls. The man pushed the girls forward faster, guiding them into a narrow maintenance shaft. The walls were tighter, and the air grew colder. Behind them, a faint red glow appeared. Eyes drones with scanning beams had entered the tunnel. They had been found. The girl panicked. "They're going to catch us." The older woman held her close. "Don't look back, just keep moving." But the girl stumbled, falling hard. The man caught her before she hit the ground. But his own body slammed into the wall. He grunted in pain, his side bleeding now. Still, he didn't stop. He lifted her again, his strength running low, but his will burning strong. They reached a junction 3 paths ahead. The man paused, scanning quickly, then pointed to the right, deeper underground. He took a small device from his pachysphere, the size of a rock, and twisted it once before tossing it down the left path. It rolled and beeped softly, then exploded in a burst of heat and sound. A false trail. The drones chased the echo while the trio vanished into the shadows of the right corridor. They moved until their legs gave out, then found an old chamber. Smaller and colder than before. This one had a broken glass dome on the ceiling, and through it, they could see the night sky stars flickering like tiny fires in the black. The man gently set the girl down and collapsed beside her. His breathing was rough, chest rising and falling like waves during a storm. He had done everything to protect them, and now his body was failing. The older woman tore part of her sleeve and pressed it to his bleeding side. "You're hurt worse than we thought," she whispered. The man winced but said nothing, just stared up at the stars through the cracked dome. The younger girl opened her eyes, barely able to speak. She reached for him weakly. "Why? Why are you doing this? Why not leave us behind?" He looked at her for a long moment, then slowly reached into his pocket. He pulled out a folded photo, torn, faded. It showed a group of soldiers, smiling, standing beside an alien woman and a small child. The girl stared at it, confused. The older woman leaned closer and suddenly gasped. "I know her. That's Alari," she whispered. "She was one of ours. She vanished years ago with a human unit." The man nodded, pain in his eyes. He pointed to the child in the photo, then to the sky, then back to himself. The message was clear, even without words. He had once saved someone else too, and maybe now he was trying to do it again. The older woman sat down beside him. "No longer afraid," she whispered. "Then we will survive together, human, even if the shadows move, even if the stars turn away." And outside, in the distance, the drones returned to silence for now, but night had only just begun, and the real danger was still watching. The silence didn't last. It never did in places like this. The deep tunnels gave a false sense of peace, but death was always nearby, quiet, waiting, watching. The human lay still, barely awake, his body shaking from blood loss beside him. The younger alien girl fought to stay conscious. Her injured leg throbbed. But she didn't complain anymore. The older woman pressed her ear to the tunnel wall. She could hear something low, mechanical. Moving, she turned sharply. There. Coming back, the girl blinked, confused. "But they went the other way. They're not stupid," the older one said, voice tight. "They're circling us, trying to trap us in." She looked at the man lying beside them. His face pale, breath shallow. They had no time, no strength, no way out, unless... Her eyes landed on a metal door in the corner, half buried under rubble. She limped over, kicking aside debris, and tried the handle. It was jammed. The girl saw her and whispered, "What is it?" "An old emergency exit, maybe," she answered. if we can open it. We might reach the surface. The human stirred, hearing her voice. With effort, he sat up, blood still dripping from his side. He looked at the door, then slowly forced himself to stand. His legs were weak, but his eyes were sharp again, full of fire. He walked over to the door, raised his boot, and kicked it once. Twice. The third time, the rusted frame groaned, cracked, and gave way. The door swung open, revealing a narrow stairway leading upward. The girl gasped, "We can get out." But just then, a high-pitched screech echoed through the tunnel behind them. The drones had returned, red eyes glowing like angry suns. 1, 2. 4 of them floated down the hallway toward the chamber, weapons ready. The human turned eyes wide, then stepped in front of the girls. He drew a device from his belt, a small disc with blinking light sand, pressed it against the wall. Boom! The girl asked, eyes wide. He gave a tired smile, then nodded. The older woman helped the girl toward the stairwell. But the human didn't follow yet. Instead, he picked up a bent metal rod and stood near the tunnel entrance like a final shield. No? The girl cried, "You're coming with us." He didn't speak. He just looked back and gave a short, soft nod, a promise, not a goodbye. Then he turned and faced the approaching drones. Their weapons charged, blue light building at their tips. He pressed the button on the wall. Disc boomed, the explosion roared like thunder. The tunnel shook. Metal flew, and fire lit the chamber like a rising sun. The stairwell behind them cracked, and rubble rained down. The girls screamed, ducking under the stairs as debris fell all around them. When the dust cleared, silence. The older woman peeked out. The chamber was half destroyed, smoke curling from the shattered doorway, but no drones, no sound, and no human. "No," the younger girl whispered, crawling out. "No, no, nowhere is he." She tried to stand, but her leg gave out. The older woman grabbed her, holding her tight. "Don't move, you'll hurt yourself. I don't care," she cried, tears streaming down her dirty face. "He saved us. He stayed behind." Then. Sound footsteps, uneven and slow from the smoke. A figure emerged, limping, coughing, covered in black soot, shirt torn, arm bleeding against the human. "Alive," the girl cried out, laughing through her tears. He collapsed near them, breathing hard, eyes glazed with pain, but still alive. She reached out and touched his hand, holding it tightly. "You came back." He looked at her, chest rising and falling, then gave a faint, lopsided smile, his strength fading fast. The older woman wasted no time. She helped lift him, one arm over her shoulders, together. With the younger girl leaning on the wall, they began climbing the stairs, step by step, inch by inch. Every movement was pain, but they didn't stop. Above them, the hatch at the top glowed faintly with natural light. Real light, not machine light, not tunnel flicker sunlight. They were close, so close behind them, the tunnels cracked again. A distant sound, reinforcements, more drones, faster and smarter than before. The human turned and tossed a second disc down the stairs. No explosion this time, just a shimmer, a pulse shield, temporary, but enough to block the way for now. The hatch opened with a metallic scream, and the sunlight hit their faces. The air was dry but clean, the wind cold but fresh. They emerged into the open world again, a new part of the scrapyard farther out. Where fewer patrols went, they collapsed behind an old engine shell, gasping, alive, burned, bruised, but alive. The girl held the human's hand again, whispering, "Thank you for not leaving us." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His actions had already spoken louder than any words, and as the fire raged below, and the smoke drifted into the sky, the stars above seemed just a little brighter, because pain had not broken them, and mercy had not died. The sun was fading again. Long shadows stretched across the scrapyard as the wind picked up, carrying the bitter scent of rust and smoke. The 3 survivors, 2 alien women and 1 wounded human, crawled beneath the wreckage of an old dropship. Its body twisted and half buried in sand. It wasn't perfect, but it was shelter. The older alien woman checked the sky every few seconds. She didn't trust the silence. It was too quiet. No drone sounds, no footsteps, not even wind inside the ship's belly. Still, it was the safest place they'd seen in hours. The younger girl lay with her head resting on the human's chest. His breathing was rough, but steady. His face was pale, streaked with ash, and his lips cracked from heat and exhaustion. But he was still holding on. The girl whispered, "He needs rest." Real rest. Her voice was soft, her fingers wrapped around his hand. The man didn't respond. His eyes were closed now, but he didn't let go of her hand either. The older woman opened a small panel inside the dropship. It was an old escape pod, chamber empty, dark, but surprisingly dry. She found a blanket rolled inside. Dusty but usable. She brought it over and covered both of them, then sat beside the entrance, her back to the wall. Watching, listening. They had been hunted, trapped, nearly killed, but here, in the heart of a forgotten ship. It felt like they had bought themselves a few hours of peace. And peace, even short-lived, felt like a gift. The human groaned softly. Waking again, he blinked slowly, looking around, disoriented at first. Then he spotted the younger girl and gently squeezed her hand. She smiled, tears in her eyes. "You're awake." He tried to speak, but no sound came out. So instead, he pointed to the girl's leg. She looked down. It was red, swollen, but no longer bleeding. The bandages had held, even after all the running. The falling, the fire. She nodded. "Still. Hurts, but I'll live, thanks to you." The man tried to sit up, but the older woman stopped him. "Don't," she said firmly. "You've done enough." She looked into his eyes, no longer suspicious, no longer guarded. "You saved both of us. Now, let us keep you alive." He gave a faint smile, but didn't fight her. Instead, he leaned back again and stared up at the dark ceiling. The girl whispered, "Tell me, why do you care?" The man slowly reached into his chest pocket and pulled out the old photograph. Again, he showed it to them, this time pointing to the child in the picture. Then he touched his own chest. Then touched hers, and hers. It took a second, but the meaning hit them both. You lost your daughter?" the older woman asked. Quietly, the man didn't speak, but his eyes filled with pain and truth. The girl whispered, "So now, you're saving someone else's daughter." She clutched his hand tighter, as if trying to protect his broken heart with her own. The wind howled outside again, shaking the ship slightly. The older woman stood and checked the opening. Still clear, still quiet. Then she walked back and sat close to the human, her voice softer now. "What is your name?" she asked. He blinked, then reached into the dirt beside him and slowly began drawing letters with his finger. 4 letters. Joanna, Jonah, the younger girl said with a smile. "That's human. 4 warrior." The man gave a weak chuckle, then nodded. She placed her hand gently on his chest. "Well, Jonah, you're our warrior now." The older woman leaned her head back, eyes closed. She had seen war, pain, betrayal, but never mercy like this. Not from a stranger, not from a human. It changed something deep inside her, something that had been cold for too long. Hours passed, the night deepened, and Jonah finally drifted into real sleep, his face relaxed for the first time in days. The younger girl watched him for a while before whispering to the older woman, "Do you think we'll survive this?" The older one looked at the sleeping human, then at the stars peeking through the cracked metal above them. She answered slowly, "We've survived the worst, and now we have someone who would die to keep us breathing." Yes. We'll survive, because... Now we're not alone. Silence fell again. But this time, it was peaceful, not threatening. Inside that broken drop ship surrounded by shadows and metal, they found something rare. Not just safety, but warmth, connection, hope. And as the three of them slept side by side, wounded, tired, but alive, the forgotten tunnel whispered a promise. The world had tried to break them, but mercy had survived the fire, and tomorrow they would rise again. The first light of morning broke through the clouds like soft fire. Golden rays touched the wreckage of the ancient scrapyard. The broken dropship, half buried in rust and sand, stood silent. Inside it, three figures slept close together, two alien women and one human, survivors of a night filled with pain, fire, and impossible choices. The younger girl stirred first, blinking slowly as her violet eyes adjusted to the light. Her body ached, her legs still swollen, but she could breathe again, and she wasn't afraid anymore. She turned her head to see Jonah, the human, still asleep beside her. His chest moved. With shallow breaths, his face bruised, one arm wrapped in makeshift bandages. But he was alive, still with them. The older woman sat nearby, already awake. Watching the horizon through a crack in the ship wall, she spoke without turning. "We need to move soon. The drones may come again, and Jonah needs real help." The younger girl nodded slowly. "But where do we go?" Before the older woman could answer, a sound echoed through the scrapyard engines. Not drones, not scavengers. These were heavier, deeper transport ships, coming fast from the north sky. Jonah woke at the sound, his eyes snapping open, alert. Even through the pain, he sat up, grabbed his scanner from beside him, and stared at the blinking screen. Then he smiled weakly, pressing a button that lit up green. A beacon. He had activated it days ago, hoping anyone would find them, and now someone had. Minutes later, shadows covered the wreckage as three human transport ships descended. Their lights swept across the sand, scanning the area. One landed not far from the dropship, its ramp lowering with a heavy hiss. Armed soldiers rushed out but stopped when they saw what waited. Not an enemy, not an ambush, but a human man slumped beside two injured alien women, all three barely standing but still alive. One soldier stepped forward, removing his helmet. His eyes widened. "Commander? Is that Jonah?" The others murmured in shock. Jonah had been listed as dead for over a year, lost in an old mission, declared Mia and forgotten. But here he was, covered in ash and blood, alive and cradling two aliens like family. The soldier stepped closer. Uncertain, Jonah raised a hand slowly and pointed to the girls. Then he spoke, his voice dry and cracked. "Help them." First, the medical team rushed forward, lifting the alien girl carefully onto a stretcher. She clutched Jonah's hand tightly before letting go. The older woman helped carry him herself, refusing to let strangers take over fully. The humans looked confused, unsure why a hardened warrior would protect aliens so fiercely, but none of them questioned it aloud. Inside the ship, they were cleaned, checked, and treated. Real medical beds, clean water, soft blankets. It felt like a dream. The girl cried silently as cool medicine touched her wounds, the pain finally leaving her body after what felt like endless suffering. Jonah lay in the next bed, a fresh bandage around his ribs, an IV in his arm. He watched her with tired eyes. The older woman stood between them, now dressed in clean clothes provided by the medics. She turned to Jonah and whispered, "They want to take us to a refugee base, but they want to know if you'll be coming too." Jonah didn't speak. He simply looked between the two of them, then nodded. Later, when the ship lifted off, the younger girl held his hand again. She looked up at him, her voice quiet, full of something deeper than words. "You were the only one who stopped. The only one who saw us. You didn't have to save us, but you did." Jonah looked at her, then spoke softly. "I saw my daughter in you." She blinked, and tears filled her eyes. Then she leaned against him, whispering, "Then I'll be your daughter, if you'll let me." The older woman watched silently. She didn't cry, but she reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. They were not just survivors anymore. They were something more, not bound by species, or language, or blood, but by pain shared, hope rebuilt, and a bond stronger than war. The ship rose higher, leaving the rusted world behind and below. The wind erased the footprints in the sand, the broken trap where it all began. Now empty because they had escaped it not just in body, but in soul. They were no longer the forgotten, the trapped, the hunted. They were a family, and their story had only just begun.